Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to BookTrek 2021. This is a 5-month mission I'm embarked on with a bunch of other booktubers where we're reading Star Trek fiction for our sins. We're reading Star Trek fiction for the rest of the year. Start out in August with the original series. All of the original series, whether you want to do the 3 seasons of the show or the animated series that were written up so well by Alan Dean Foster, or any of the decades of continuity that span from there for the original characters. Then we moved on in September to the Next Generation. That was a great deal of fun for me because it was like encountering a new kind of Star Trek. I had dismissed it completely as boardroom Star Trek, and it isn't. There's a lot more going on there. And then we moved on to Deep Space Nine, which is an iteration of Star Trek that I really liked. When I watched it on TV, I was eagerly waiting for the first episode. And so you could color me surprised at how absolutely crappy the novels were. I read one. Maybe I hit some bad ones. I've heard from some of you that you have hit some good ones. I hit one bad Deep Space Nine novel after another, so that by the end of that month, I was just reading random selections of whatever. I wasn't reading Star Trek anymore. I would still make a BookTrek video every day, but I would just read whatever. And then I admit, that put the fear of God in me, because I thought we're moving on now to Star Trek Voyager, which is another iteration of the show that I really liked when it aired. I was eager for it to air. I thought it was extremely well done from the beginning. And I thought, well, if you thought all that about Deep Space Nine, what's to stop Voyager novels from being really bad? I'd read a lot of Voyager novels. I don't remember them being really bad, but I didn't remember Deep Space Nine being the expanse that it was. So, but I've been pleasantly reassured about Star Trek Voyager. It's terrific. I've been revisiting the show, although most of my time, my little sporadic time watching anything, is still being devoted to the Next Generation. I really want to nail that down. That's a gift of 2021, to get a whole new Star Trek, the most revered of all the Star Trek franchises. I'm perfectly willing to admit that. I knew that even before I liked it. But I have been watching a little bit of Voyager here and there, and really enjoying that, and really enjoying the books as well. And I've been helped in that by the fact that the books have been very enjoyable. Most of them have been very enjoyable. And that streak continues. That is true today. Today we're reading a book by Dean Wesley Smith, Christine Catherine Rush, and Nina Hoffman. The first 2 of those I've read many Star Trek books from. And this is a Star Trek Voyager novel called Echoes. And there you see Catherine Janeway in the early part of her mission with the bun of steel. And you see a bunch of Voyagers just stacked on the cover. And that's the gist of the novel. This is the other day we did a BookTrek video in which I showed you a novelization of an episode. And I wondered aloud why people would do that. Why would you do that? If you're writing a book, then you're not constrained by your special effects budget. You're not constrained by anything. Why would you write a book? Why would you write an episode up as a book, especially if you're not going to do much in the way of expanding on it, elaborating on it? Now, I know that's a little ironic coming from me, because one big Star Trek project I would absolutely love to see would be for Paramount to allow science fiction authors to write novel-length adaptations of every original episode of the show. We have the short stories by James Blish, but they were, a lot of them, done from preliminary scripts. In most cases, Blish had never seen the episode, and certainly didn't have any idea of the continuity that resonated from it over the following 50 years. I think a gigantic project like that could be wonderful. Could be just wonderful. Find the right authors, you'd have no shortage of volunteers. Although I love that idea, I'm not a big fan usually of writing up episodes, although the aforementioned Alan Dean Foster did a great job with the animated episodes, most of which were terrible. He made great books out of them. This is the opposite end of the spectrum. This is not writing up an episode, but rather doing what I just mentioned, giving us a story that no way could the show have afforded to do. In the basic plot of this is that Voyager enters an empty area of space where a planet might once have been, and while they're there, individual beings start popping up, just appearing in the hard vacuum of space and instantly messily dying. And no one can initially can figure out what's going on there. Why is that happening? It has to do with alternate dimensions, doesn't it? And alternate realities, and things being a little bit out of sync. And there is a MacGuffin, there is a big lurking storyline along those lines that forces our Captain Janeway and her crew to contend with, argue with, fight with, and ally themselves with many, 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 many alternate reality versions of themselves. Just a feast. Just an absolute feast. And I guess maybe you could do it on a Star Trek budget. I mean, you'd have the same set, but you'd have to trash the set and remake it. And there'd be a fortune in costuming and whatnot. I guess it could be done. If any cast of Star Trek could do it, it's this cast. The cast of the show is terrific. With one notable exception that I shall not belabor here. And I loved it. I just thought this was absolutely fantastic. I don't remember reading it. It must have come out 20 years ago. And I don't remember reading it at the time. Boy, oh boy, though. Everything that a Voyager novel should be. All the characters spot on, at least for the time period that this was, it says number 12? Number 15. It says number 15, so this would have been the second season of the show. Not much character development along a lot of lines there, but some of the characters were already firmly etched in stone by then, and they're all perfectly captured here. I think probably because at least the top two authors there are veterans of doing this kind of thing. And all of the alternate Voyagers are so interesting. All of them are so interesting that I wanted them to get books of their own. The conclusion, the MacGuffin, the resolution of the MacGuffin, and also the particular version of Voyager that's going to end up being the hero, is all extremely telegraphed. I mean, if you don't know all of that in pretty much explicit detail by page 70, then you don't read enough bad science fiction. That's all there is to it. It isn't a question of it really surprising you. There was one surprising moment in here, but otherwise, it isn't a question of it surprising you. It's a question of you imagining this as an episode. The original impetus to do Star Trek fiction 50 years ago was that. It was, we want to imagine more adventures of these characters. It wasn't really the 21st century mania with revamping things, redoing things, retconning things. Not any of that. It was mainly just, we want these characters in a new adventure. And that's what this is. Only an adventure that I think would have strained the budget of the show. Just delightful. So my streak with Voyager continues. I'm going to push my luck. I'm going to take tomorrow off, and then I'm going to push my luck next week by trying some stuff that may hurt my streak. I'm intentionally going to do that. And the main thing I'm going to do, Paramount Pocketbooks did a thing with Deep Space Nine and with Voyager and with The Next Generation of giving writers briefs to imagine a future to the show after the final aired episode. And authors have run with that. I guess those are popular with fans because otherwise they wouldn't keep appearing. And they have developed a gigantic Star Wars style extended universe of continuity of their own. And it was my experience in reading those novels of Deep Space Nine that the authors were entirely counting on that loyal fan base, and so did no explaining of any kind in their novels. So that some of those 10 years later Deep Space Nine novels were almost incomprehensible. They were entirely relying on fan service for the last 15 books. Not just the last one, but the last 15. Voyager did the same thing. And if I remember correctly, one particular author, she got a lot of those books. She wrote a lot of those books and therefore crafted a lot of that extended universe style world. And I don't know if she does a better job at it. I'm blanking on her name at the moment. Breyer, I want to say. I read a couple of those books years ago and felt like I was left out in the cold. I felt like this isn't bad, but you're not doing your job as a writer. You're not making this a standalone book. Every book should be a standalone book. Every book should at least do a little to catch you up to speed. And I remember a couple of the ones that I read didn't do that, very conspicuously didn't do that. So I'm going to push my luck. I'm going to push my luck in an attempt to end my Voyager streak. So next week, I'm going to be exploring that kind of stuff, rather than going to these early numbered novels that I already know. I already know the world they're writing about. I already know they'll please me. We shall see. We shall see what will happen. Maybe a tiny bit of research. Maybe if I can find the first one of those books so that I don't feel, I mean, if the author's not going to meet me halfway and I already know that, why be masochistic? Why? I think maybe I'll do a little bit of research and see what the first of those books is and maybe get in on the ground floor and see if that helps any. But I will report back because BookTrek is only halfway done for the month of November. Then we move on to Star Trek Enterprise. kind of hoping I can finagle a Zoom chat with Mark Richardson about Star Trek Enterprise, all things Star Trek Enterprise. That would be a lot of fun. But because I think that aside from the original show, that's his favorite. But anyway, we'll see what happens next week. I'm going to take the day off tomorrow from Star Trek, from talking about it, not from reading it and not from watching it, but from making a video about it. And then we'll start fresh on Monday. So I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.